Hello everyone, you're welcome back to my channel. SILEM here. In today's video, we're going to be drafting this lovely armhole princess that Bustier top with built up collar. So if you want to see how to do this, definitely keep on watching. So first off, I'm starting off with the front piece. The first thing I'm doing is I mark the baseline. Now I'm marking the armhole line 8 inches. I've also gone ahead now to mark the bust point 11 inches, under bust 14 inches, waistline 17 inches, and the length of this top is 24 inches. So now I've extended all those lines. For the neckline, I'm just going to be marking a 3x3 neckline. Obviously, we know that this bustier has a built up neckline, so we're just going to mark this neckline for now. Now I'm going to divide the shoulder by 2, then I'm marking that on the baseline, and then I'm coming down from that baseline by 1 inch, and then I'm going to connect that 1 inch point to the neckline to create the shoulder slope. Now I've gone ahead to label all the lines: chest, bust point, under bust, waistline, and blouse length. Now I'm going to divide the nipple to nipple measurements by 2, and I'm going to mark that on the bust point line. Now on the under bust, what I marked on the bust point, I'm going to take out half an inch. So remember that my nipple to nipple measurement was 8 inches divided by 2, that gave me 4. I marked 4 on the bust point, but from the under bust down to the blouse length, I'm going to mark 3.5. okay, then I'm connecting all those points together. Now on the under bust, you want to decide the dart intake you want to use. If you are not so busty, you can use 2 inches, but if you're very busty or you're plus size, you need to use 2.5. So my client that I'm making this dress for, she's not that busty, so I'm going to be using 2 inches, and I'm marking that all the way down to the blouse length. Now I'm going to connect that point from the under bust to the bust point with a curve. Okay, so this is what we have. So now it's time for me to create the armhole curve. To do that, I'm going to divide the bust circumference by 4 and mark that on the chest line. Now what I have on the baseline there, that shoulder measurement, I'm going to mark that same measurement on the chest line. Okay, and then I can now connect that to my shoulder slope. Now I'm going to measure the distance I have, that line. I'm going to measure that line, and I'm going to get the midpoint. Okay, so at that midpoint, I'm going to go in by half an inch, because you don't want to have any folding around your arm area when you create your bustier. So now I'm using my ruler to connect those points together to create the armhole. Now I'm going to connect that point at the bust point to the midpoint on the armhole curve. Now along that armhole curve, I'm going to come down by 2 inches. Okay, now this is my dart intake that I'm taking for the armhole dart. So the dart intake I'm using is 2 inches. Okay, so I'm going to connect that now back to the bust points. All right, so can you see what we have? So this is our dart created. So in order to make sure that the side piece and the front piece align when we are sewing, I'm going to come up from the side piece by 2 inches. So the same 2 inches I use as my dart intake, that is what I'm going to come up by when I want to extend that side piece. Now from that point, I'm going to create a new armhole curve. Okay, so now that we're done with that, as you can see, we're done with our bustier drafting. So it's time for us to put in our normal body measurements. I've already put in my bust circumference divided by 4 on the chest line. So now I'm just measuring my dart, and I'm replacing that, and then I'm adding 2 inches sewing allowance. Okay, now on the under bust line, I'm going to divide the round under bust by 4, mark that, replace my dart. Okay, when I measure my dart, what I have is 2 inches. I replace my dart and then add my normal 2 inches sewing allowance. You can also use 1.5 inches sewing allowance if you prefer. On the blouse length, I'm going to divide the hip measurements by 4, mark that, measure my dart is also 2 inches. I'm going to replace my dart and then add the 2 inches allowance. Okay, now I'm going to connect all 3 points together. From the under bust to the chest, I'm using a straight line, but from the under bust to the blouse length, I'm using a curve. So as you can see, now we're done. It's time for us to modify this pattern to the exact style that we have in the picture. So I've gone ahead to extend my paper, as you can see. Now for the bottom part of this top, you notice that the top is curved in front, so want to create that curve that this has. So from the center front there, I'm going to come down by 1.5, and then you're going to see also that this hip area of this top is a bit free, so I'm going to add an extra 1.5 inches at the blouse length line, and then I'm going to connect that to the waist. Okay, now I'm also going to go up by 1.5 inches just to create that curve, so the curve is very obvious, and I'm going to connect it to the other 1.5 that I marked on that center front. Now it's time for us to create that built up collar. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to extend our shoulder slope upwards just a bit, just extend it slightly. Now the next thing we're going to do is from that neckline, we're going to go out towards the shoulder by 0.25 inches. Okay, so 0.25 inches from that neckline now towards the center front, we're going to mark 0.5 inches. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is from that 0.5 inch mark, we're going to go up by 2 inches, and then we're going to mark that point. From that 2-inch mark, we're going to come inwards towards that center front by 1 inch. So we're coming in towards the center front by 1 inch. Okay, now from the base of the neckline, we're going to go up by 2 inches. Okay, so go up by 2 inches from the base of the neckline. Now on the baseline, which is that initial line we marked, we're going to go in from the center front by 1 inch. Okay, so just take it bit by bit, follow every step. Now from that new line we marked, we're going to draw a curve and connect it to the 1 inch mark at the top. Now you want to decide how deep the opening is going to be. If you notice, there's an opening in front, so I want mine to get down to the chest line, which is 8 inches from the baseline. So I'm just connecting that all the way up. Now the next thing we'll do is just create a curve using our curved ruler to the first 0.25 inches that we marked. Okay, so can you see? Take it bit by bit and you're going to get it. So this is our built up collar for the front piece. Okay, very easy if you take it bit by bit. Okay guys, so now what I'm going to do now is I'm just cutting. So just pay attention to the way I'm cutting and the parts that I'm cutting, so you don't make a mistake and cut the wrong parts out. Okay, so after cutting, this is what we have. Can you see? Our front pieces are ready. Now it's time for us to draft the back. For the back, obviously we're starting off the same way. We've marked our baseline, then we're marking our armhole line 8 inches, and then we're marking the bust point line 11 inches. Okay, we're also marking the waistline, and then we're marking the full length line. All right, we've also extended them. So the only line we did not mark was the under bust. Now we're going to go ahead and divide the shoulder by 2, mark that, and then for the back we're using 3 inches width for the neckline and 1 inch for the depth. I'm going to come down now from the shoulder by 1 inch, and then I'm going to create my slope by connecting that to the neckline. Now what I have on my shoulder, I'm still going to mark it on the chest line, and then I'm going to connect that to the shoulder slope. Okay, so now we're going to measure that line we have. Now we're going to try to create the armhole curve, so we're getting the midpoint of that line. Now I actually forgot that this was the back piece, and I was drafting forgetting to add my zipper allowance. Okay, so make sure you add your 1.5 inches zipper allowance when you're drafting the back. What I did was I simply just added a piece of paper to add to that zipper allowance there. Okay, and make sure that all your measurements start from the zipper allowance line. Okay, I'm just extending the neckline into the zipper allowance. Now I'm dividing the bust circumference by 4, marking that on the chest line, then I'm connecting that to the midpoint of that line. I'm also going ahead now to label all the lines so we don't get confused. Now at the bust point, I'm dividing the nipple to nipple measurement by 2, right, which gave me 4 inches. So 8 divided by 2 gave me 4 inches. So I marked that from the blouse length all the way up to the chest line. Then I connected that with a straight line. Now on the waistline, I'm going out on both sides by half an inch. This is my dart intake for the back. And then I'm connecting that all the way up to the chest line and all the way down to the blouse length. I'm also extending all those lines into the zipper allowance. Now at the waistline, I'm just going in by half an inch and then I'm connecting that all the way up to the chest line and all the way down to the blouse length, just to take out any form of zipper bulging. Okay, you don't want to make your top and the zipper bulging. Now time to take our body measurements. I'm just marking the same thing I marked on the chest line, which is the bust divided by 4. I marked that, replaced my dart, and I added 2 inches allowance. On the waistline, I'm dividing the waist circumference by 4, marking that. Make sure you always start your measurements from the zipper allowance. And then after marking the waist circumference divided by 4, I replaced my dart and added 2 inches allowance. On the blouse length, I divided the hip circumference by 4, marked that. There's no dart to replace, so I'm simply just going to add the normal 2 inches allowance. Then I'm going to connect those points together. Okay, and now we're all done for drafting the back, but then we need to modify this to the exact style that we want. Now I've also extended my paper. Now the next thing we're going to do is extend that shoulder slope like we did for the front. Now from the neckline out towards the shoulder slope, I'm just marking 0.25 inches. Okay, again from the neckline towards the center front, I'm marking 0.5. okay, from that 0.5 now I'm going to go up by 2 inches and then I'm going to mark that point. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to connect that 2-inch mark to that first 0.25 inch that I marked, and then I'm going to extend that 2-inch line. I'm going to come down now from that line by 0.5 inches and then draw a curve to connect those 2 points together. And that's it for our back built up neckline. Just make sure you blend all the lines so it's nice and smooth. Now we're going to do the same thing we did for the hip area and the hem area for the back. I extended the hip by 1.5 inches, so I added 1.5 inches to the hip, as you can see, and then I went up from the hem by 1.5 inches, just the same way we did for the front. Then I'm marking that on the center back there. I'm just coming down by 1.5 inches. Okay, this is just to create that curve and make the curve that is on the blouse more defined. Now I'm just connecting the two 1.5 inches. I'm connecting them together to create that nice curve. Okay, now because I want this back piece to have that same armhole princess, that Bustier style line, I'm just connecting the dart of the back to that center point of my armhole curve. Okay, now we'll go ahead to just cut the piece. Just pay attention to the way I'm cutting so you don't make a mistake and cut along the wrong line. So this is what the piece looks like once we're done. These are the back pieces, as you can see. So now I'm just going to focus on the center back and the center front pieces. Now we're going to measure our shoulder and our built up neckline. We want to make sure that they are equal. So this is the back now. I'm just measuring it. So when I measure, what I got was 6.5 inches. Now I'm going to measure the front as well. And when I measure, what I got was 7 inches. So we're going to go ahead now and trim ½ inch away from the built up neckline for our front. Okay, 7 inches minus 6.5 is 0.5. So I'm going to trim out that 0.5 from, the center front, so that I can make sure that they are the same when we join them together. So now I'm going to measure again to be sure that what I have is equal with the back. So as you can see, when I measure, what I have is 6.5. So our pieces are now equal. And that's it, guys. These are the pieces, front and back. In my next video, I'm going to show you guys how to draft this lovely piece. So please subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next video.